Reductive and generalizing approaches represent two fundamental, often opposing, methods for defining, understanding, and explaining what a thing, an entity, system, or concept is. The primary distinction lies in whether a thing is understood by breaking it down into its smallest, most fundamental constituents, reductive, or by identifying its common properties and placing it within a broader category, generalizing. Reductive approach, reductionism. The reductive approach defines a thing by dissecting it into simpler, more manageable, or more basic constituents. It is a bottom-up method based on the principle that to understand a complex system, one must scrutinize its discrete elements. Focus, discrete parts, components, or lower-level mechanisms, for example, atoms, genes, neurons. Definition of a thing. A complex entity is simply the sum of its parts, or nothing but a collection of smaller entities. Goal. To achieve theoretical simplicity, unify sciences, for example, reducing biology to chemistry, and explain high-level phenomena through low-level laws. Example. Defining human behavior strictly as a result of chemical reactions in the brain, reductionist, rather than as a psychological or social experience. Strengths. Allows for precise, detailed analysis, crucial for identifying underlying mechanisms in science. Weaknesses. Risk of oversimplification, missing emergent properties, complex behaviors that only appear when parts are combined, and losing contextual nuance. Generalizing approach, generalization. The generalizing approach defines a thing by identifying common properties, patterns, or trends across multiple, often distinct, instances and formulating them into a general rule, concept, or category. It is often an inductive method that moves from specific observations to broader, more inclusive, but less certain conclusions. Focus, similarities, patterns, and overarching categories. Definition of a thing. A thing is a member of a class, understood by what it shares with other members of that class. Goal. To create broad rules, theories, or models that apply to a wide range of situations. Example. Defining a car as a four-wheeled vehicle for transportation, which generalizes across sedans, SUVs, and trucks. Strengths. Allows for organizing information, predicting behavior, and applying knowledge to new situations. Weaknesses. Risks overgeneralization, overlooking critical individual differences, and ignoring the specific mechanisms that cause the behavior. Interplay in science. While often seen as conflicting, these approaches are often used in tandem in scientific research. Inductive generalization. Researchers observe specific patterns and form a general hypothesis. Reductive method. Researchers break down the phenomenon to test if the hypothesis holds at a molecular or physical level. Emergentism holism. Often presented as an alternative to pure reductionism, this view argues that the whole is more than the sum of its parts and that new, non-reducible properties emerge at different levels of complexity. On this interpretation, the pro-life view isn't hinging on precision at all, it's hinging on accuracy, because it tries to describe what the embryo actually is as a unified, self-directing entity with an internal principle of motion. That's an attempt to capture the phenomenon faithfully, even if the underlying mechanisms aren't fully understood. By contrast, the reductive, precision-driven approach tries to explain development by isolating discrete causal components, genes, signals, structures, but this very precision can fail to capture the emergent, organism-level unity the pro-life view is pointing to. The clash, then, is between an accuracy-oriented description of the whole, a developing organism with its own intrinsic directionality, and a precision-oriented attempt to reduce that whole to parts. Where the precision sometimes breaks the phenomenon apart so finely that the organismal unity disappears. An example of this is a chair. A chair can be understood as a functional arrangement of material, rather than just a pile of matter. Its identity comes from the way its parts are organized to support a sitting human body. If the same wood were arranged differently, it would no longer be a chair, so the defining feature is the structure and purpose, not the raw substance. A wooden chair, then, is an artifact whose form and stability depend on how pieces of wood are shaped, joined, and oriented to create a stable, load-bearing design. Wood itself is a biological tissue, even though it is no longer alive once incorporated into furniture. It is composed of elongated plant cells, tracheids, vessel elements, and fibers that once transported water and provided structural support to the tree. These cells remain visible in the grain patterns of the chair. Their thick cell walls, built from cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin, give wood its hardness and resistance to bending or compression. Even after the tree is cut, the architecture of these cells continues to determine the chair's mechanical properties. At a deeper level, the cell walls are made of complex molecules. Cellulose forms long chains of glucose that bundle into microfibrils. Hemicellulose fills the spaces between them, and lignin acts like a natural resin that stiffens and waterproofs the structure. These molecules are themselves arrangements of atoms, primarily carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, linked into stable patterns. When you trace the chair all the way down to this atomic layer, you find that its material identity is simply a particular configuration of atoms arranged into molecules, molecules into cell walls into cells, and cells into wood. Across these layers, the chair emerges not from the atoms alone, but from the organization imposed on them. Atoms do not know they are part of a chair, they simply follow chemical rules. It is the healable structure, the way the wood is cut, joined, and shaped, that creates the functional object we recognize. In this sense, a chair is a perfect example of how complex artifacts arise from nested layers of biological and physical organization, each level contributing something essential to the final form. Accuracy and precision give you two different ways of explaining what a thing is, and each carries a different kind of philosophical power. Accuracy aims for a broad, faithful description of reality, even if the boundaries are fuzzy. When you describe a chair as a functional arrangement of material designed for sitting, that's accurate. It captures the essence without pretending the edges are sharp. Precision, by contrast, tries to give narrow, crisp criteria, like defining a chair by exact dimensions, materials, or structural thresholds. Precision is useful for engineering or classification, but it can distort the phenomenon if the boundaries are inherently messy. Because these two modes illuminate different aspects of a thing, they also differ in explanatory power. Accurate explanations excel when the goal is understanding the nature or function of something, why it exists, what role it plays, how it fits into a system. Precise explanations excel when the goal is measurement, prediction, or rulemaking. The more an explanation captures the causal structure, functional role, or organizational logic of a thing, the more powerful it becomes. A precise definition of a chair's dimensions tells you little about why it counts as a chair. An accurate account of its function tells you far more. When you weigh explanations normatively, deciding which ones should guide judgment, policy, or moral reasoning, the most powerful ones are those that track the deepest level of organization that actually matters. Explanations that merely slice reality into neat categories have low normative weight because they track convenience rather than essence. Explanations that reveal what a thing does, how it works, or what role it plays carry higher normative weight because they connect to the underlying structure of the world. In short, accuracy gives you the right picture, precision gives you the sharp edges, but the explanations that deserve normative authority are the ones that illuminate the real causal and functional architecture of the thing itself. A correct view isn't determined by how sharp or technical a definition is, but by how well the explanation fits the real structure of the thing being described. Accuracy gives you a broad, faithful picture of the phenomenon, while precision gives you narrow, crisp boundaries. Both matter, but neither is sufficient on its own. The explanation that deserves to be called correct is the one that captures the right level of organization, functional, causal, biological, or structural, without distorting the phenomenon by forcing it into overly rigid categories. In this sense, the first determinant of correctness is ontological fit. The view must match what the thing actually is, not what is easiest to measure or define. From there, the decisive factor becomes explanatory power. A powerful explanation reveals why the thing behaves as it does, how its parts relate, and what principles govern its structure. It accounts for more features with fewer assumptions and resolves more puzzles than it creates. Precision can help here, but only when it clarifies rather than constrains. An explanation that merely lists measurements or criteria may be precise, yet weak. An explanation that illuminates causal architecture may be less precise, yet far more powerful. The correct view is the one that reveals the underlying logic of the phenomenon. A third determinant is coherence, the ability of the explanation to integrate with what is already well established. A view that contradicts reliable background knowledge or requires ad hoc exceptions is almost always weaker. Coherence doesn't mean conformity. It means that the explanation fits into the broader web of understanding without tearing holes in it. A correct view should feel like it clicks into place within the larger structure of knowledge. Finally, the explanation with the greatest normative weight is the one that should guide judgment, policy, or action. Not all explanations matter equally. A chemically precise description of wood has little normative relevance for deciding what counts as a chair. A functional description of support and design has far more. Normative weight tracks the level of organization that actually matters for the question at hand. The most powerful explanations, those that reveal the real causal and functional architecture, are the ones that deserve to shape decisions. In this way, the correct view emerges from a synthesis of ontological fit, explanatory power, coherence, and normative significance.